The hyperdrive coupling shot past Riven Kale's temple and buried itself in the hangar wall with a clank that sounded way too final. He groaned, pressing a hand to his pounding skull. The 3-day-old Ixen rum had seemed like a great idea the night before. So had betting his last credits against Saris Draven's full house. Terrible choices, both of them. Now he was half under a broken freighter, staring up at leaking coolant lines and praying the room would stop tilting sideways. The vessel wasn't a ship so much as a tomb with engines, a relic the owner swore only needed a tune-up. Riven knew better. What it needed was a memorial service and a scrapyard slot. But debt didn't fix itself, and owing the most ruthless casino owner on Kethra Station 50,000 credits didn't leave him much room for principle. Through the gaps in the freighter's landing struts, Riven watched the busy dock. Heavy boots stomped past, cargo mechs rumbled on their treads, and the occasional drunk pilot cursed at malfunctioning gear. Then, unexpectedly, small lavender feet in polished silver shoes stopped right in front of him. They shimmered like they'd never once touched dirt. "Mister?" a soft voice asked. Riven shut his eyes. Perfect. A kid. Not stuck, he muttered. Working. The small figure crouched, peering under the ship. She was no more than 8 years old, with violet eyes far too large for her delicate face. Her hair, metallic white, spilled like liquid light beneath the dock lamps. The shimmering dress she wore probably cost more than the rusting container Riven called home. "Are you my father?" the girl asked without hesitation. Riven blinked, trying to process the words through his hangover haze. "What?" "I'm looking for my father," she said patiently, as though explaining basic math to a slow student. He pushed himself up on his elbows, groaning. "Kid, I can barely take care of myself." He waved the expired ration bar he'd been gnawing on. "This is breakfast. Also dinner. From 3 days ago." She wrinkled her nose. "It smells awful." "Yeah. Tastes worse." "So, you're not him?" Riven sighed. "Unless your mom's into broke mechanics who shower twice a week and live in scrap metal boxes, probably not. Most kids would have run off by now. Not this one." She settled right down on the oily floor, expensive dress soaking up hydraulic fluid without a care. "You smell like engines." "That's because I'm lying in them. I like engines." Riven studied her. No parent in sight. And on Kethra Station, finding a child of her species wandering alone was like spotting a diamond floating in sewage, it simply didn't belong. Someone would be looking for her. "Where's your mom?" he asked. "In her office. Meetings all morning." She picked up a wrench and nearly toppled with the weight. "This is heavy." "Yeah, that's the point. Look, you can't just wander around asking strangers if they're your dad." "Why not?" "Because most people are jerks." She tilted her head. "Are you a jerk?" Riven almost smiled despite the ache behind his eyes. "Professionally." Her laugh rang out, a strange mix of music and static, oddly pleasant. "Mom says humans are dangerous. But you're just, dirty." "Thanks, I guess." He reached for the plasma cutter. Dock thieves hadn't snatched it yet, miracle of miracles. The girl slid down beside him, hanging her head upside down to watch. "What are you doing?" "Trying to convince this wreck it's still a ship." "Is it working?" "About as well as my life choices." Another giggle. For some reason, he didn't hate the sound. "What's your name, kid?" "Ori." "What's yours?" "Riven." She wrinkled her nose. "That's boring." "Fits me fine." Ori stayed, cross-legged, eyes sharp as she followed everything he did. She asked questions that weren't entirely stupid. She nodded at explanations like she understood. 20 minutes passed before the click of expensive heels on metal grated into Riven's ears. He didn't even have to look to know who they belonged to. Ori's expression brightened. "That's my mother." Yeah, figured. Saris Draven rounded the ship like a storm taking form. Where her daughter was softness, Saris was sharp angles, elegance balanced with barely contained fury. Her violet skin bore undertones not natural to her kind, and her jeweled dress could have bought out half the dock. She moved like someone who'd learned 17 ways to kill with her jewelry alone. Get away from my daughter, she said, each word precise enough to cut. Riven slid out, slow enough not to aggravate either his headache or her temper. She came to me. Said she was looking for her dad. Ori tugged her mother's dress. He smells right. All humans smell like sweat and regret, Saris snapped, then caught herself. No offense. None taken, Riven said. Fair assessment. Saris grasped Ori's hand, but the child resisted, her small frame stubborn as stone. I want to stay with him. You're coming home, Saris warned, her voice sharp enough to make most grown men run. But Ori only crossed her arms. Riven knew he should shut up. Should let them go. Instead, he heard himself say, she wasn't bothering me. Saris turned those violet eyes on him, eyes that had seen fortunes rise and fall with a flick of her wrist. She was a woman who calculated odds with every breath. For the first time, though, something cracked. A shadow of desperation flickered there before she smothered it. How much do you know about art and biology? She asked. Purple skin, silver hair, drink like demons. That's about it. Her jaw tightened. We need to talk. Privately. Riven gestured at his excuse for an office, a converted storage closet with mismatched chairs and overdue invoices plastered on the walls. Saris stepped in without waiting. She didn't look like a woman used to waiting. My daughter is dying, she said. The words hit harder than any hangover. Not immediately. But soon. Without a father's bond, her neural pathways will collapse. 2 months, maybe less. Riven set down his coffee mug very carefully. Lady, I don't know what you've heard about human biology, but... Not physical, she snapped. Emotional. Psychological. Ardent children require dual parental bonds. Without them, the brain dissolves itself. That's one hell of a design flaw. It worked on our homeworld. Pairs stayed together for life. But I, her voice wavered, bitterness curling around the words, thought I could have everything. Then get her a father, Riven said. You're rich, terrifying, and not hard on the eyes. Shouldn't be tough. Her lips pressed tight. I've tried. Actors, suitors, telepaths. She senses lies at a level no one can fake. Every attempt failed. Now she's wandering the docks asking strangers. 17 today. You're the first she didn't walk away from. Riven rubbed his face. His debt, his empty account, his stomach twisting on expired rations. And outside, that kid, grinning like rust stains were treasure. What's in it for me? He asked. Your debt. Gone. He blinked. 50,000 credits. 62, with interest. Erased. His headache roared. I don't know anything about kids. Neither did I, Saris whispered. Through the office window, Ori had already smeared grease across her lavender cheeks, smiling like she'd found gold. Riven exhaled. 3 days. I'll spend time with her. She'll get bored. Then we're done. Saris smoothed her dress, eyes burning. Don't let her die. Don't teach her crimes. And don't feed her after midnight. What happens after midnight? Nothing. She just gets cranky. Riven chuckled despite himself. When they returned to the hangar, Ori had dismantled a hydraulic valve and somehow fixed the blockage. She looked up, face streaked with grease like war paint. Fixed it, she announced proudly. Riven checked. She was right. He looked at Saris. Your daughter just saved me 2 hours. Of course she did, Saris muttered. Ori beamed. Can I stay? Riven hesitated, then nodded. If your mom says yes. Saris weighed them both, calculating again. Finally, she exhaled. Fine. But I'll collect her at 6 sharp. Ori cheered. As Saris swept out in a storm of perfume and warning glares, Riven handed the girl a rag. First rule of the shop, he said. Everything here can hurt you if you're stupid. So don't be stupid. Ori nodded solemnly, grease dripping from her chin. And second rule, customers are always wrong. But we pretend they're right, until they pay. That's dishonest. Welcome to business, kid. She took the rag like it was sacred. Riven? Yeah. Thanks for not lying. Everyone else says yes when they don't mean it. You said no and meant it. For the first time in a long time, something shifted in Riven's chest. The next morning, Ori was already waiting outside Riven Kale's hangar when he staggered in. She sat cross-legged on an overturned crate, humming to herself, dressed not in her shimmering gown but in coveralls that were far too big. The sleeves dragged on the deck, and her silver-white hair was tied back with a frayed bit of copper wire. Somehow, she looked more at home like this than she had yesterday in silk. You're late, she said matter-of-factly, violet eyes bright. Riven rubbed his eyes, still fighting last night's rum hangover. I didn't know I was on a schedule. You are now. She hopped down and handed him a wrench, the right size before he'd even asked. He raised an eyebrow. You psychic or something? No. Just smart. Riven grunted, sliding back under the freighter. It wasn't the first time a kid had annoyed him, but it was definitely the first time one had guessed the tool he needed before he spoke. She wasn't just playing dress-up as a mechanic, she was watching, memorizing, learning. By noon, the girl was covered in grease, her expensive coveralls smeared black. She'd asked 100 questions and absorbed every answer like oxygen. When Riven explained the way a coupling redistributed power, she nodded as if she truly understood. When he cursed at a stripped bolt, she repeated the curse with perfect inflection. Hey, he barked. You said it first, she replied, unbothered. That doesn't mean you repeat it. Why not? Because that's, he stopped, realizing he had no real answer. Because I said so. Ori grinned. That's what parents say. Riven froze. For a second, the world went quiet except for the buzz of lights overhead. He forced a laugh and shoved himself back to work. I'm not your parent, kid. I'm just a broke mechanic trying to survive. Mom says surviving is the same as fighting. She's not wrong. When 6 o'clock rolled around, Saris Draven arrived like she owned the entire dock, which, in a way, she did. She took one look at her daughter's ruined coveralls and sighed like someone losing a game they hadn't agreed to play. Is this how you spend the day? She asked. She helped, Riven said, testing the freighter's diagnostics. For the first time in months, the board lit up green. Actually solved a problem I'd been stuck on. Saris's expression flickered. Of course she did. Ori tugged on her mother's hand. Can I come back tomorrow? Saris looked at Riven, her eyes calculating odds. He shrugged. Your call. After a long pause, she nodded once. 7 sharp. Not a minute later. And so it became routine. Every morning, Ori appeared in her 2 large coveralls, hair tied back, eager to learn. By the second week, she no longer asked which tool was which, she simply handed them over as Riven reached out. By the third, she was crawling inside engine housing small enough only for her to fit, emerging with grime on her cheeks and pride in her eyes. You're not terrible at this, Riven admitted one day as she carefully reattached a fuel line. Mom says I get my brain from my father. She said it casually, but he caught the shadow in her voice. Whoever he was, sounds like she doesn't know. Single conception, she replied with a shrug. She wanted a baby, but not a husband. Said families are complicated. Riven leaned back, wiping sweat and grease from his brow. Yeah. Families are complicated. She tilted her head. Are you lonely? He opened his mouth to lie but stopped himself. She'd know. Somehow, she always knew. Sometimes. But lonely isn't the worst thing. What's worse? Owing your mom 62,000 credits. Ori giggled, handing him the next tool. Over time, their rhythm grew familiar. Work in the morning, lunch at a food stall Ori insisted on paying for with her allowance, then back to engines until Ceres arrived. The collection ritual became its own show. Ceres would stride in, immaculate despite the dock grime, survey her daughter's ruined coveralls, sigh theatrically, then fix Riven with a glare sharp enough to peel metal. She's learning useful skills, Riven would say. She's learning to swear in 6 languages, Ceres would counter. 7, Ori corrected proudly. But beneath the sparring, something else brewed. Riven noticed it first when Ori forgot the name of a wrench. She paused too long, frowning as if the word had slipped through a hole in her mind. He brushed it off as tiredness. Then came the moment she stared at a familiar tool rack and whispered, "Which one is the turning thing again?" Riven's gut twisted. Later that day, his comm buzzed. Ceres's voice came tight, strained, stripped of her usual control. "Keep her there. I'm coming now." When she arrived, she didn't bother with her usual composure. Her skin was pale, her hair disheveled. She swept her daughter into her arms, whispering soft reassurances. Ori blinked, confused, her small hands trembling. Riven stood nearby, silent, watching the cracks in the perfect empire Ceres had built. Watching the mask slip as fear overtook calculation. And for the first time since this strange arrangement began, he realized, this wasn't about clearing a debt anymore. It was about saving a kid who had started to feel like his. 3 weeks into their strange arrangement, the workshop had developed a rhythm almost comforting in its routine. Riven Kale woke early, earlier than he had in years, to find Ori already waiting outside, coveralls patched from yesterday's grease stains, her hair tied back in the same frayed copper wire. She was always eager, always curious, always far too bright for the rust-stained hangar that served as their classroom. But lately, something had shifted. She still laughed, still asked sharp questions, still caught him off guard with insights well beyond her age. Yet now and again, she paused mid-task, staring at a tool as if it had turned into a stranger. "Pass me her small hands hovered over the rack, fingers trembling. "The turning thing. The wrench?" Riven supplied gently. "Yeah. Wrench. I knew that." She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. He noticed more slips as the days dragged on. Forgetting which boot went on which foot. Mixing up the names of simple parts she'd mastered weeks ago. One afternoon, she called him Papa by mistake, then immediately asked if she had said it wrong. When Ceres Draven arrived that evening, her posture was flawless, her jewelry sharp enough to serve as weapons, but her eyes betrayed her. Riven saw the panic she tried to bury. "It's starting, isn't it?" he asked quietly, after Ori had run to wash her hands. Ceres pressed her lips together, then gave the faintest nod. "Too soon. The doctors swore we had weeks left." "What happens?" Her voice cracked despite the effort to control it. "Her brain will consume itself. Words, faces, functions. At the end, she won't even remember how to breathe." Riven felt his stomach lurch. "And you knew this was possible when you had her?" "I thought I could control it," she snapped, pacing his cramped office like a caged predator. "Thought if I had the resources, the treatments, the right people," she broke off, pressing her fingers against her eyes. "I thought money could solve everything. I was wrong." He leaned back in his chair, suddenly exhausted. Join the club. The door alert chimed before she could answer. Through the grimy window of the hangar, a sleek transport descended onto the dock. Too polished, too quiet, too precise. Military lines disguised under corporate logos. Saris went rigid. Etherian Industries. Her voice was a hiss. They funded the conception research. I thought the contracts were sealed. The hatch opened with hydraulic grace. 3 figures stepped out, 2 augmented security types moving with the confidence of trained killers, and between them, a human woman in an immaculate suit that cost more than Riven's entire workshop. Her hair was sculpted into an aggressive shape, her gaze sharp as a scalpel. She didn't knock when she entered. She simply stepped inside like she owned the place. Saris Draven, she said, voice like chilled steel. We need to discuss your breach of contract. There's no breach, Saris replied, standing tall. All agreements were fulfilled. The woman, Director Halden, lifted a data pad, projecting a contract into the air. Legal text scrolled endlessly. Section 47, Subsection 12. All biological materials resulting from funded research remain the property of Etherian Industries. That clause refers to lab samples, not. It refers to all biological materials. Including offspring. Riven stepped forward, torque wrench in hand. You're trying to claim ownership of a child. Halden's eyes flicked over him like he was a smudge on glass. And you are. The guy telling you to get the hell out of my workshop. Her lip curved. Ah. The surrogate father figure. How quaint. She glanced toward Ori, who had appeared in the doorway, watching wide-eyed. We're aware of Miss Draven's creative attempts to circumvent our safeguards. Quite clever. Ultimately futile. She's not a project, Riven snapped. She's a kid. She's proprietary technology, Halden countered coldly. Worth over 600 million credits. Our investment will not be wasted. She gestured to her guards. Retrieve the asset. Ori whimpered. Mama. Saris stepped in front of her daughter, voice trembling with fury. She's my child. She's our patent. Halden's smile was all teeth. One of the guards reached forward. Riven swung the torque wrench. The other guard intercepted it with reflexes too fast for unaugmented humans. Pain shot up his arm as the blow was absorbed like nothing. Then Ori bit the first guard's hand. Hard. Blood welled through the glove. The guard cursed, raising his fist. Riven didn't think. 1 second he was pinned, the next he was between Ori and the strike, taking the hit across his jaw. His teeth rattled. Blood filled his mouth. Touch her again, he growled, and I'll dismantle you with tools you don't even know the names of. Halden barely blinked. Dramatic. But unnecessary. We're not monsters, Mr. Kale. We simply want what belongs to us. She doesn't belong to you. Halden's gaze sharpened. Would you like to know why she's dying? Shut up, Saris hissed. The neural degradation isn't a flaw, Halden continued, savoring each word. It's a feature. Built-in obsolescence to prevent unauthorized breeding of enhanced genetics. We never intended subjects to reach reproductive age. The hangar went dead silent. Ori's breathing hitched. You're saying, Riven said slowly, you design children to die. We design products with expiration dates. The fact they resemble children is incidental. Riven set down the wrench very carefully. His hands shook with the urge to swing again, but he knew it would end with him dead and Ori taken. Get out, he said. Halden smirked. We'll be back. With court orders. And then they were gone, leaving the stench of corporate arrogance in their wake. Ori stood trembling, tears streaking her purple cheeks. Am I going to die? She whispered. No, Riven and Saris said at the same time. They glanced at each other over the child's head, united for once in desperate denial. Riven pulled Ori close, her small frame fitting against his chest as though she'd always belonged there. He smelled the grease in her hair, felt her shaking. "We'll fix this," he promised. Surprised to find he meant it. "I don't know how yet. But we will." Sarissa's voice cracked, but she didn't argue. They own judges. Politicians. Entire systems. They have papers that call her property. Then we'll have to get creative. Riven tightened his hold on the girl. "Rule number 1, kid. Every problem has a solution." Her small voice mumbled against his chest. "You just have to find the right tool." "That's right." And in that moment, Riven knew the truth. Somewhere between grease-stained lessons and midnight laughter, the girl had stopped being a stranger. She was his. The medical ward reeked of copper and antiseptic. Riven Kale had been breathing it for 36 hours, long enough that his lungs no longer protested. The countdown in his head ticked louder with each passing minute. Ori lay dwarfed by machines that traced every fragile spark of her fading neural pathways. The graphs all pointed downward. He didn't need to be a doctor to understand what they meant. Her lavender skin had turned pale at the edges, her silver-white hair spread across the pillow like tarnished wire. Her violet eyes opened, unfocused, searching for something beyond him. "Are you my dad yet?" she whispered. The question again. She'd asked it 100 times these past weeks, stripped of context now, just the desperate echo of biology fighting to keep her alive. Riven took her cold hand gently in both of his. "Working on it, kid. You know me and deadlines." She blinked, confusion tugging at her small face. "You smell right. You've mentioned that." "Did I? I don't remember things good anymore." "Well, you don't remember things well." That earned the ghost of her old smile. "Tell me something. So I can remember it a little." Riven's throat tightened. He swallowed hard and leaned closer. "Remember the first engine you fixed? The busted hauler coupling? You crawled under in your fancy dress, ruined the whole thing with grease, and your mom nearly had a heart attack. But you found the problem in 10 minutes. I'd been wrestling it for 2 days. I was smart. You are smart. Tell me more." So he did. He told her about the first ship he ever dismantled as a boy on Earth, about outsmarting 3 dockhands in a poker game she was definitely too young to hear about the way she'd laughed when she called a hyperdrive a butthead. He told her everything, clinging to each story like it was a rope keeping her tethered. Saris Draven returned at dusk, hair tangled, skin blotchy from lack of sleep. She sank into the chair opposite, gathering her daughter's other hand. "Hi, baby." Ori blinked at her. "Pretty lady. Don't be sad. Oil smell man is here." Saris gave a broken laugh. "Yes. He is." They sat in silence, monitors beeping their cruel rhythm. 23 hours, Saris whispered. "I know," Riven said. "The doctors want to start easing care. Maybe we should." "No," his voice came out harsher than intended. He softened it. "We don't give up. Rule number 1. That's not rule number 1. Workshop rule number 1 is don't be stupid. Life rule number 1 is we don't give up. When did you become an optimist?" "About 5 minutes ago." "Still feels weird." Ori stirred between them. "Are you married?" "What?" they both said at once. "You sound married. All that arguing. Still holding hands." Only then did Riven realize his free hand had tangled with Saris's across the blanket. Neither of them pulled away. "We're not married, baby," Saris said softly. "We're just worried about you. You should get married. Then I'd have both." Her eyes fluttered shut. The words lingered. Later, in the dim quiet, Saris confessed she'd had him investigated. She knew he wasn't just some broke mechanic. Riven Kale had once been Admiral Kale, hero of the Earth fleet, savior of Saturn's rings, a man who disappeared into exile after losing everything. He confessed in turn, the wife he hadn't saved, the flag and ring delivered in a box, the guilt that had driven him into obscurity. "You're fixing her," Saris whispered. "Am I?" His voice broke. "Because from here, she's dying, and I'm useless." "You're here." "That's not useless." Before he could answer, alarms blared. Ori convulsed, monitors screaming. "Daddy," she cried, lost in the storm. "Daddy, where are you?" Riven cradled her against his chest, heart shattering. "Right here, kiddo. I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? I'm your father. Always have been, since the day you walked into my hangar. You're mine. My daughter. And I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. I choose you." The machines fell silent. Then steadied. Her eyes opened, clear for the first time in days. "Daddy. Your breath smells like old cheese." Riven laughed through his tears, clutching her close. Saris wrapped her arms around both of them. 12 hours later, doctors were baffled. The neural collapse had reversed itself. Ori's pathways weren't just stable, they were strengthening, rebuilding. "Impossible," they said. But impossible had just happened. Before they could celebrate, the sky outside the ward filled with transports. Etherian Industries had returned. This time with mercenaries in powered armor. Director Halden strode in, flanked by soldiers. "Court orders," she announced. "Legal seizure of corporate property." "She's not property," Riven said, stepping between them and Ori's bed. "The courts disagree. Move, or be removed." Riven sighed. For years he had avoided this moment. Now there was no choice. He dug out an ancient communicator, pressed his thumb against the scanner. Authorization, Admiral Riven Kale. Authentication code, Phoenix 77 Alpha. Priority override. Third Fleet, respond. Halden smirked, until the hospital windows lit with the flash of dozens of warships dropping from hyperspace. The Third Fleet, loyal as ever, engines humming like thunder. "Orders, Admiral," a voice crackled through the comm. "Prevent any unauthorized removal of civilians from this facility. Anyone touches my daughter, introduce them to Newton's laws. Equal and opposite reactions. Understood. Fleet standing by." The mercenaries froze, weapons suddenly worthless under the gaze of warship cannons. Halden's smirk faltered. "You're Admiral Kale," she whispered. "Used to be," he said. "Still am when I need to be. You've been living in a shipping container. It's called a sabbatical." She tried to rally. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is." His voice dropped to the old admiral's tone, cold steel. "You built children to die. Called them products. You tried to take my kid. So here's what happens, you void every contract. You erase every file. You forget she exists. Or I remember how creative I used to be at solving problems permanently." Halden left, fast. Her troops followed. Ori sat up in bed, eyes wide. "Dad. That was so cool." "Language," he warned. "You said as 12 times yesterday." He paused. "Fair point." Sarah stared at him like she was seeing him anew. "You gave up everything. You're insane." "Probably. I think I love you." Riven blinked. That escalated quickly. "I'm a decisive woman." She pulled him into a kiss, messy, unexpected, perfect. "Ew," Ori groaned, covering her face. "My parents are being gross." Riven looked at Saris, startled. "Parents?" "Well, yeah," Ori said. "Mom's mom." Your dad. Basic math. Saris's lips curved into a rare smile. Basic math. 1 year later, Ori wrote in her journal from their new apartment with real walls. Riven still had his workshop. Saris still ran her empire. The Third Fleet still checked in now and then, loyal to their missing admiral. And Ori still reminded them every night before bed that she was their best fix. It wasn't perfect. It was family. And that's the end of this story, a tale about how a washed-up mechanic, a desperate mother, and a stubborn child rewrote their fates in the shadow of corporations and fleets. It's a reminder that family isn't about blood, or contracts, or convenience, it's about the people who choose you when the galaxy tries to take everything away. If you've stuck with me through this adventure, thank you. Stories like this one are meant to spark that little, what if, we all carry inside us, the one that whispers that even the most broken among us can still fix something that matters. And sometimes, if we're lucky, that something is ourselves. If you enjoyed this journey, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. That way, you won't miss the next strange tale waiting out in the stars. If you liked Ori, Riven, and Saris, share this video with a friend who loves a good underdog story with a sci-fi twist. And if you want to help the channel grow, drop a comment below. Tell me what you'd have done in Riven's place when Ethereum came knocking. I read them all, and I love seeing your takes. Until next time, keep your plasma cutters sharp, your hyperdrives tuned, and your imagination wide open. Thanks for watching.